Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to Lush Life No Labels. I'm Fatu. Welcome back, my old listener, and welcome in any new listeners in this year of 2026. And I have a few announcements and also some New Year's goals and resolutions. But before I jump into that, I want to highlight my story of the week around how I spent my New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. This year, I actually didn't do much for New Year's. I pretty much just hung out around the house and then I went out to dinner and got a spicy lobster and shrimp pasta dinner. It was really good. It was at an Italian restaurant, so I also got some free bread and it was pretty tasty. After that, I went to a local bar where there were people celebrating, and I actually got to try on a Patriots helmet randomly enough. If you're from New England, I'm sure you know who the Patriots are. They win a lot of football games, and people in New England are obsessed with them. So that was fun to try on. It was actually more snug than I guess I imagined them to be. And then at midnight, they gave everyone some free champagne. So that was pretty nice. And then I went home afterwards. So it was a pretty chill time. The bar wasn't overly crowded and the restaurant was full, but it wasn't too overbearing. So it was pretty quiet this year for me. I didn't do fireworks this year, which I did go and watch last year by the water. In previous years, I've done things like going out dancing with friends. Last year, I actually participated in an ice sculpture contest. So basically, around the city, they have all of these ice sculptures downtown. And there's this whole scavenger hunt type of thing where you walk around, you take pictures with each of the sculptures, and then you can post it and tag them. And depending on how many you post, you can be entered into a raffle to win a free hotel stay at this really bougie hotel. So I did that last year, didn't win, but I did not do that this year. Pretty much just chilled. And then on New Year's Day, same thing, pretty much just hung out and rotted in bed. So I'd say it was a very relaxing time to move into 2026. And of course, whenever there's a new year, a lot of us talk about, oh, what are my New Year's resolutions and all that. So I'll definitely talk about that in this episode. But before I jump into it, I do want to talk a little bit about some changes to expect on this podcast. Like I said, if you're a new listener, then welcome. This will be very new for you. If you are a returning listener, then I definitely hope that you continue to stick with me in this new year. I'm excited about this podcast because last year in 2025 was the first year that I did this podcast completely solo. And one of the goals I had at the beginning of the year was to do it every single week. And I did achieve that for the most part. At the end of the year, I kind of fell off, but I'm happy that I did meet that goal pretty much of doing it every single week. Most of my episodes are solo, but as you guys know, I do have a number of episodes where I have guests come on and speak about their experience, their life, or something about improvement or whatever else, pets, things like that. So I expect to, of course, continue doing this solo and also bringing you guys on some really exciting guests this year. But I will be changing the cadence of these episodes, and you'll notice that as well in the episode description moving forward. These episodes will now be bi weekly instead of weekly, and they will be coming out on Friday mornings instead of Thursday mornings. So, no worries, you don't need to memorize that. I will put that in the description for you all. It's also going to be on my socials, so my Instagram and Threads page as well. So you can feel free to check that out. Mostly the reason why it's going bi-weekly is because life is busy and I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys quality episodes and not just putting it out to put it out there. So Doing it bi-weekly gives me more time to give you guys more quality episodes and give you guys more exciting topics to listen to. Of course, the podcast will still focus on self improvement for the most part, but I always say this if you've heard me before, self improvement is not always a topic on my mind. I don't just sit around thinking, oh, here's what I'm improving on today. I mostly am just living my life. But of course, sometimes I do take time to reflect and think about what has been going on in my life, which is kind of where each of the episode topics comes from. Again, I will continue to do that, but I'd love for my listener to leave some comments on some topics that you'd be interested in hearing about. Of course, I can talk about whatever I want to talk about, but I do want to put out things that you guys would be interested in hearing from me about. Or if there's anything that you are trying to figure out and want my perspective on, feel free to leave me a comment and I can definitely talk about that. If you don't want to leave a comment, you can DM me on the Instagram, which is Lush Life No Labels underscore pod. Or you can also send me an email at lushlife710 at gmail.com. Also, feel free to share your favorite episode this past year to your friends, family, husbands, situationships, coworkers, whoever, your mailman, definitely whoever you want to know about this podcast. Definitely coming back to the title and the goal of this podcast, it's called Lush Life, No Labels for a reason. And that's because I am striving to live my best luscious life. And my definition of a luscious life may not be the same definition that you have of a luscious life, which is completely fine because we all want different things and different things make us all happy or make us feel relaxed. So here I'm certainly talking about what I define as my own version of that. And I'm hoping to give you guys different ideas on how you can start thinking about or continue to think about what makes your life luscious or what you are striving to do in life. And obviously, a lot of that stems from my journey in improving myself, my behaviors, and also just other parts of my life. And then, of course, the no labels is that we are the ones who define that for ourselves, and other people are not in charge of telling us what to do and how to live our lives. And part of that also is I've mentioned in the past that I love history, I love to travel. So I'll have more content around that in the sense that I live a globalized life. I was born in West Africa, so already globalized, and then moved to the US. I went to an international boarding school for high school and also an international college for undergrad and grad school. So I've been consistently surrounded by people from all over the world. I have friends who live around the world. I also have a ton of listeners from different countries in Europe, Asia, South America. The fact that we also all live in a globalized world that became even bigger during COVID when we had to rely on communication and connection during global lockdowns really reinforces to me that I want to be putting out more things that are not just focused on my experiences in the US or my experiences in select places, but also wanting to put out more content for you guys around other countries or other regions of the world that you may be interested in learning more about. Maybe you want to learn more about the culture. Maybe you want to learn more about what people define as living their lush life or what people strive for in those other regions as well. So, those types of episodes will either focus on places I visited, where I know people from there, or have an interest in general. And I'll also try to have guests from some of those countries who can speak firsthand on what it's like to be from there. And given that this podcast does focus on living your lush life and intertwining that a bit with self improvement, I'll make sure to put in some key points about that throughout the episodes. So if you're interested in hearing about a specific country, maybe your country, leave me a comment or send me a message. And as a preview, actually, my next episode will be about the city of Cartagena in Colombia, South America, where I recently traveled and learned so much about. So make sure to tune in to my next episode for that. And also just watch out for more self improvement coming in 2026. Now, switching gears a little bit and going back to New Year's, it's funny because, of course, around the world, we are all on one calendar. But fun fact, we are on the Gregorian calendar, which I believe was starting to be implemented back during the Roman Empire times. But before that, different cultures and different places around the world would have their own New Year's celebrations at different times. For example, in some parts of the world, they would have, I believe, 10 months of the year. And then many parts of the world actually, New Year also focused on the lunar calendar instead of the calendar we currently use, which is 12 months. Some areas of the world focus their calendars around the harvest season. So, springtime is actually when New Year's would begin because that's when they would start replanting and the farms would start going again after the dark winter. So, it's pretty interesting how now everywhere around the world we are on the same exact calendar and we all do New Year celebrations on the same day. And I've spoken before about how a tradition outside of celebrating New Year's globally in one day is also that many countries now have the tradition of having New Year's resolutions. And that's pretty much having those goals where you say, okay, starting in January, I'm going to go to the gym for 5 days a week, or I'm going to do XYZ. And I used to do those, but now I don't do them. I stopped doing those a few years ago because honestly, it made me feel too strict. And in the past, I would feel bad if I said, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym this many times," and then I just would not go in January and I would fall off early. I'm not trying to feel bad about that. So maybe I just stopped doing it for a personal reason. Of course, a lot of my friends and other people around me still do New Year's resolutions because ultimately it is a personal thing. I just do it for that reason. And that's not to say that I don't have any goals for the year. Of course I do. But I find it funny that everyone says, New Year, new me. I actually don't think that needs to be the case. And maybe that's going against the grain to say that. In my opinion, you don't need to redefine yourself every single year. Maybe you had a great 2025 and you are in a good stride right now. So you don't feel like you want to make any adjustments. You just want to keep doing what you've been doing. And that's perfectly fine. Maybe you want to make some slight adjustments. Instead of going to the gym 3 times a week, you say, okay, actually, I'm going to try to go 4 times a week instead. Or maybe you ate out a lot last year and ordered DoorDash or Uber Eats a lot. And this year you're saying, okay, instead of ordering 3 days a week for food delivery, I'm going to try to cut it down to just 1 to 2 days a week. So small adjustments like that. Perhaps you want to feel less burdened this year. You had 10,000 hobbies. You were on the local volleyball team. You played pickleball. You were going to art classes. You were going to music lessons. And maybe you felt like, I am running around way too much. I don't have enough time to sleep. Let me cut down on one of these activities and just pick two of them to prioritize for the first half of the year. It could be anything, right? But again, it goes back to my point of I don't think we need to completely redefine ourselves and say, oh, I need all of these new goals or I need to be a new person. If that's what you want to do, then go ahead and do that. If you don't feel like you need to do all that, then you don't need to do all that. Your life is your oyster. And going back to this podcast, right? Living a lush life is what you define it as. And nobody else can tell you, oh, you need to have a goal. You need to do XYZ. That's on you. And also having specific goals is great because it can help you stay focused. And if you feel like, you know what, I am too overwhelmed by having this all in my head, I need to write it down in a notebook. I need to journal about it. I need to put things in my calendar to remember it. And that's going to help me with my New Year's resolutions. That's another way to go too. And let's say you didn't meet all of your goals last year. No worries. You have time to continue working on those this year and beyond. Sometimes I feel like we have these goals and we say, well, I have to finish everything this year. Why? Some things can be time sensitive, and that completely makes sense. But a lot of things, honestly, are not time sensitive. And you have the rest of your life to work on those things. So I would encourage you not to over pressure yourself, unless, of course, it is time sensitive, then yeah, you got to get on that. If you started it partially, hey, at least you did start, right? That's how I like to think about these things, because I'm someone who used to pressure myself so much over these things, and I would just go crazy. And then I would stress myself out, which is not great because that affects your health. And now there are some goals where I'm more strict about and some that I'm less strict about. And it helps me just be a little more sane. But that's just me. And although I do say that I don't have any New Year's resolutions, I do have general goals for what I want to accomplish, or at least what I want to try to do this year. It's actually a method I call start, stop, continue instead of a resolution or a goal. This is a method that I've used at work actually in team building activities. So I'm translating it over here because it has helped. It is something that helped me before. So in start, stop, continue, you think about things that you want to start doing, things that you want to stop doing, and things that you want to continue to do. So I'll give you a preview of mine this year. I still need to flesh some of these out. You may listen and say, oh, these seem really general and very broad, but there are many ways for me to reach them. There are specific mini goals in each of them that I can elaborate on in a future episode. For start, I want to start being more intentional about what I want. Sounds general, right? Yeah. And to me, this means not being strict in life in terms of, oh, I see this happening in 20 years, but I do want to think more long term. I want to think about, hey, do I want to buy a house, for example? If I want to buy a house, then I need to think about planning that out. Maybe it's thinking about, okay, how much down payment do I plan to save? Where would I consider living? What would be my budget for a home? These are things that I would have to start actively thinking about and actively planning for. I can't just snap my fingers one day and then have my down payment. I'd have to actually plan for that. So I definitely want to start being intentional about those types of things and actually pick a number versus just thinking, oh, maybe in the future I'll buy a house. So that's what I want to start doing intentionally. Or it could be for you, listener, you might say, maybe I want to have kids in the future. Well, yes, you can just pop one out and then go from there. Or you can say, okay, let me start. If you're a woman, for example, maybe you want to see your gynecologist and get a fertility exam just for your knowledge. You don't need to make any decisions, but it's something that you just have in the back of your mind if you decide that's something you want to do in the next few years. Or if you want to move across the country, you could randomly pick a place and go, but you might want to say, oh, maybe I should start looking for jobs in a place that I actually want to move to. Maybe I should start intentionally looking at the cost of living in that place. So it's more being intentional about planning for specific things that you know have to be planned out versus just saying, okay, I'm going to do this and then not actually put in some things in place for it. So that's an example of what I want to start doing is actually picking those specific things and then start being intentional about how to plan that out, especially if there's a time sensitive thing about it. One thing I want to stop doing is scrolling so much on my phone. This is a bad habit that I have. Maybe you have it too. And we all live in this world where there's social media everywhere and we're always on our phone. When I'm on the train, everyone face down, looking at their phone. No one's looking up. No one is seemingly aware of their surroundings. And I'm not here to judge them. I do it too, but I definitely want to stop scrolling so much on my phone. And instead, I want to replace that time with other things. part of that is that I want to increase my attention span instead of switching back and forth every 5 seconds. So, for example, I'm thinking about getting back into my own language learning. I've mentioned on here before that I've spent years actually tutoring and teaching other people language learning, specifically English as a second language, which I love to do. But I have also had the desire to get back into learning languages myself. Fun fact about me, English is my fourth language. I actually want to learn some new languages. For example, Spanish, which is much more relevant for me because I live in the US and I travel a lot to Spanish speaking countries. You'll hear this in my next episode when I talk about Colombia, but it was a little rough some of times in trying to communicate with people. And so I don't like feeling like I can't communicate. And that's something that I want to start doing. So that's a great thing that can help to stimulate me in terms of my thought processes. But also, I won't be scrolling on my phone as much. I also want to start volunteering, for example, at a cat shelter. I've talked about before how I am always thinking about adopting and getting a pet, but I don't think I have the lifestyle for it yet because I'm all over the place all the time. I'm not ready to commit to being a pet parent, but I could start volunteering because that'll at least give me more FaceTime with them and I can still take care of some of these pets. So, those are just some examples of things that I'm thinking about that can replace my scrolling time that I want to stop. And then finally, one thing that I want to continue to do this year is to continue building financially. And this can come in a few different ways. Overall, it could be either me trying to figure out ways to decrease my expenses and or also figure out ways to increase how much money I have coming in. So that could come in a few different ways in terms of figuring out how I could decrease my expenses. Maybe it's eating out less. It maybe increasing my expenses are finding a side hustle where I'm paid, or in terms of my job, getting paid more either through being promoted or finding another job that pays me higher. Any of those things are possible, but those are some ways that I want to continue to build financially through those increases and decreases. Like I said, those may seem pretty general, but I wanted to give a few specific examples of how I break those things down into being more specific. I guess you could call those my New Year's resolutions, but I'm not necessarily super strict on these things. It's just things that I'm going to be working on. So, yeah, welcome to 2026. I'm so excited to be continuing this podcast with you all. I'm so happy for my returning listeners, and I'm excited for my new listeners, and really excited to be growing with you guys this year and continuing on this journey of this Lush Life podcast. Keep tuning in. Follow me on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Follow me everywhere. Share this podcast, leave some comments, send me emails. One thing I want you guys to think about is the start, stop, continue. Think about one thing you want to start doing in 2026, one thing you want to stop doing, and one thing you want to continue doing. Leave those in the comments, and I hope we can all continue to work towards our goals. Thank you for listening to Lush Life, No Labels. Cheers to your lush life, and see you later.